Students are often quite concerned about the methodologies they may use as part of their dissertation. They may be worried about the statistics or worried about exactly how you engage with discourse analysis. As such, this often causes them to become a little panicked and worried about how they're going to use various types of methodologies. As such, my advice is always think of the question. The question itself will stipulate a type of methodology to be used. Methodology can be the driving factor, but often it is the question that's the driving factor. So if you have a question that is about trying to find out people's opinions, trying to engage with the subtle nuances of their everyday life, you may want to go down a qualitative path. However, if you want to measure something, do direct comparisons, you're more likely to want to go down a quantitative path. As such, there is often a marked divide in students' minds between qualitative and quantitative approaches. That, again, doesn't really reflect the reality. It is perfectly appropriate and possible to triangulate methodologies and use more than one basic approach.
But I think to get a good mix of dissertations, you need a mix of qualitative and quantitative methods in terms of the way in which a dissertation is put together. Each student will have a favoured way of actually undertaking the research. And certainly, given the pressure that many students feel under in the final year, there is a temptation to look at more desk-based, library-based research. But I think that certainly in some fields means that the subject could be weakened, because I think it's important, even given the time constraints, that students do actually try and look outside and, wherever possible, attempt some level of primary research. That can then be supported by desk-based library research. So certainly a good dissertation would have a mix of those, depending on the subject matter. And that's something which certainly during the first couple of months of supervision, the relationship between the student and the supervisor should consider very carefully the methodological approaches taken. And in the dissertation itself, a section needs to be in the dissertation about why they have chosen that particular methodological approach, and that's important in terms of the justification.
So when I think of different methodologies, I think of primary research, secondary research, and theoretically based dissertations. When I talk about primary research dissertations, I'm talking about the student going out and gathering their own data. So doing questionnaires, doing interviews, doing case studies, doing focus groups, whatever the method that they use, whether it be quantitative or qualitative, it's them actually coming up with information. I think there's huge advantages by using that, in that it provides you with a lot of original information. So therefore, when it comes to you writing up your methodology or writing up your analysis chapters, you have a lot of information that you can use that is yours and it's your own. So you feel very comfortable writing about it because it's something that you've experienced and gone through. I think the difficulty when you're doing primary research is whether or not you can actually get the information you're looking for. And it's developing the tools, such as your research questions, such as your questionnaire or your interview schedule, that allows you to gather the information you're looking for to answer the question that you're posing. So many students will struggle with, can I get the information? And what do I do when I have it? Many students will have loads of information and then not know what to do with it once they have it. And instead of analyzing it and looking at it in detail, they just write it all down. So there's developments in relation to that area. For secondary research, I see that as being where you look at somebody else's research and you analyze it in a new and different way. So looking at other research studies, other questionnaires, and the data that people have gathered in relation to that. And I think that that's very beneficial, in that the data is already there and in front of you and you know what it is. And then it's just finding new ways of trying to explore how to look at that. And for some students that sometimes is very difficult because they don't have that first-hand experience with the data, so they need to make sense of the data before they can go forward. In relation to a theoretical-based dissertation, I know some students are very concerned that that doesn't give them the opportunity to go out and do research.
Well, clearly a number of dissertations at one level hardly need a methodology. They're actually library-based. They're about analysing a body of literature and exploring some ideas in relation to that literature. And there's value in that. Clearly what you'll need to demonstrate there is skills of referencing, bibliographic skills, and analytical skills in that close reading. And those are not to be underestimated. They're important. But if you don't demonstrate those, you'll end up with a very weak dissertation. If you demonstrate them well, you can have an interesting and intellectually challenging one. But of course, a lot of students do actually want to get out there and look at something and study something, and so they're having to make methodological choices. If a student bears in mind just how much time and how much practical resource he or she has available, then it's very likely that you'll choose a methodology that, that is attainable, that can be done. And probably it's important to set aside notions of representative sample. How far can I generalize these findings? Because within the limits of your resource, telling a good story about what it means to work in Sainsbury's and interrelate with other people from very different backgrounds, that story might have validity because it's something you can actually do and something you can actually reflect on. Whereas doing a sort of survey when you can't really talk to many people and they're not representative of anybody much, you probably find that although it costs you a lot of time and effort, the person reading the dissertation says, well, so what?
And perhaps finally, go with the methodology where you feel strongest, where you feel you can naturally gain the best performance from yourself.